can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's your boy Ernie, the Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, so today's video, we are going to be talking about Absolute Batman number 4. And with this one, I feel like we're learning the early origins of the Absolute Batman in this universe. And what I mean by that is, yeah, we know how he lost Thomas Wayne. We know what drove him to become Batman, but we're actually getting to see the early days of his time as Batman. He didn't just up and jump into the current bat suit that he has. We get a taste of the trials and tribulations that he has gone through, and even to a point to show you that whereas originally when you think about Earth Prime Batman, one of the things that always sticks out is his attention towards fear, striking fear in the hearts of his enemies, and even going back to citing the original line from his Detective Comics days that criminals are a superstitious and cowardly lot. And one of the things I even talked about early on with Absolute Batman is the fact that a lot of his enemies, they don't seem terribly afraid of him. They don't have any fear of him. We saw in the first issue that when he pulled up on the party animals, they just looked at him as though he was anything else. He could have been one of them for all they cared. But he doesn't have that level of fear instilled into the hearts of criminals across Gotham City. So he had to become something else. We see at a point where he's rocking a fit that's kind of almost a mixture of a bunch of different bat suits all rolled into one. It's a little bit old school Detective Comics, especially when you take into consideration that he's rocking the pistol like he used to back in the days when Batman kept that thing on him. And we also can't discount some of the, I don't know, I kind of got Adam West vibes a little bit from the suit, really more so in the mask than it was for anywhere else. There was also lots of, the Dark Knight isms with the suit, more specifically talking about the movie trilogy, The Dark Knight, Christian Bale Batman. There was a little bit of that in there as well. And we also see him using very different tactics and, trying different ways to take criminals down, really focusing more on the element of surprise and outthinking his enemies than focusing on fear at all. He's more concerned with actually operating like a bat would, a creature that is effectively the only mammal that can actually fly and kind of willed itself through evolution into being able to do so. And that's where this Batman puts a lot of his focus. It's in being adaptable. It's in trying to take the fight to his enemies and also being able to do so under any circumstances, regardless of what the criminals he's trying to take down actually wind up doing. In the Absolute universe, Batman is not a symbol of fear. Batman is a symbol of overcoming one's limitations. He was there the day his father died. His father literally died protecting him. And we get flashbacks in this issue to those times when Thomas was alive and Bruce was already proving that he had the mentality to try and overcome one's own limits in order to build and make things that defy logic. We see very early on that a lot of the gadgetry and things that he employs in this universe are early concepts based off of things he developed as a child. Even predating the death of his father, we see that he has an obsession with these creatures, largely because of a science project that he has to do, but also just seems to have a natural affinity for bats already, even before the death of Thomas Wayne. And you can also see within him that same drive. You see that same level of drive to overcome one's environment. And it's a thing that actually comes up quite a bit in this issue. It's not anything that's like just outwardly stated, but it's just a thing that you see that it takes more than just fear to strike actual fear to the hearts of his enemies. It doesn't really even matter if they're afraid of him. All that matters is that he's more effective than they are. Another thing that's actually pretty interesting about this, and I thought this was actually probably, well, it's not the most focused on thing in this issue. It's something that is kind of telling that just how little difference there is in some respects between the Earth Prime universe and the Absolute universe. As I've said a lot of times in previous Absolute Batman videos, that Thomas Wayne in this universe is not a surgeon. He's not a doctor. He's a teacher. He's an educator. But It's not to say that he didn't ever have designs on wanting to be a surgeon. What's kind of funny about all this is that the reason why Thomas Wayne isn't a surgeon in this universe as opposed to the Earth Prime universe is largely because Bruce, as is probably more common than people might want to admit, he was quite the surprise. Thomas was actually studying to be a surgeon, and it was largely for about roughly the same reasons as Thomas in the original universe. It just all had to do with wanting to help people, save people, and also protect them from losing the ones that they love, and all from his own personal experience. But in this universe, he didn't become a heart surgeon, not because he didn't have a mind to, not because he wasn't smart enough to become one, but just simply because Bruce came along and changed the whole plan. Kind of makes you wonder, because in this universe, had Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne had Bruce a little later, would there have ever been a Batman? Would there ever have been a need for a Batman? Because Thomas would not have been put in that situation where he would have encountered Joe Chill, at least presumably that's the case, or in a universe where if they just never had children at all, if he wrapped it up, or if Martha, was on birth control or something, there would not have been a Batman in this universe. It's something I think is very interesting to think about. It kind of lends credence to the darker elements of this universe that you were kind of promised, not so much in a way that's like, oh my God, this is so crazy, but in a way where you look at it and you're like, man, how different this world could have been had Bruce not been born. And I don't know, it's just kind of wild to me how that works out. But one thing I'm actually more curious to learn about is we learned in a previous issue that Batman was going to Blackgate to talk with Joe Chill as an adult. And we never really learned what he said. We don't know what the conversation was that they had. But we know that when Bruce was younger, he had a lot of words for Joe Chill. He was there at Joe Chill's hearing after he murdered Thomas Wayne. And we know exactly what he thinks of him. He thinks he's the lowest scum of the earth. In a lot of ways, the way that he goes off on Joe Chill in that courtroom was very reminiscent to me of Samuel L. Jackson in A Time to Kill.
Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell.
It was very much that righteous indignation and anger at someone potentially getting away with murder. And Bruce, even at that young age, could not just stand by and not say anything. So the real question is, what conversations is he having with Joe Chill? It's difficult to say whether or not this is the same conversation that Alfred was aware of, but I feel like maybe this might be a second visit that he's giving him, because this isn't something that happens when he's a kid. It's something that's happening much later in life. So yeah, I do wonder, what exactly is Bruce talking to Joe Chill about? Does Joe Chill have some inside track on the party animals or Roman Sionis? It's hard to say, because in previous universes and continuities, like depending on where you're at with Joe Chill, he's either a common crook, or he's a made man, or he's a guy that just was a schlub and on hard times and just trying to make something happen. It really depends. The continuity on Joe Chill has shifted at least 2 or 3 times in its history. So, it's one of those situations where we're going to have to wait and see exactly what this is. But if everything else can be so much different in this universe, why not Joe Chill? If Joe Chill has been removed from being a made man in the criminal underworld, and I think his current status quo is more that he was just a common criminal and also having some mental health issues, that's pretty much more where he's at now in current continuity. What if he was somebody who actually has those connections? I actually wonder even more, does he have any connections to Alfred? Which I don't think that would be the case. I feel like Alfred would insinuate there might be something, because it's not like he doesn't know who Joe Chill is. He's aware that Batman is speaking with this guy, but I feel like he doesn't really know the full ins of the dynamic between these two, outside of the fact this is a guy who unalived his father. But yeah, it makes you wonder, what is so special about this version of Joe Chill that in the wake of cutting a deal with Black Mask, Batman is wanting to speak with him? Is it because of his opinion on things now? Has Bruce's opinion on criminality changed any? Or maybe has he come to grips with what Joe Chill did? Or maybe he's going to go give Joe a piece of his mind. Who knows? But I can't wait to see what he does with this.